Alrighty, there you go. Don't you reckon that last song's killer? Does it for me. That's a track called Blood. So that's track 5. Obviously the first 3 songs you recognised. If you've been following them so far, they're the 3 singles. The 4th song was also a highlight, Eyes Wide Open. Okay, let's find out a little bit more about how this project came to be, the influences, where they actually recorded, how they wrote together. Will you please welcome from, I don't know where they are right now, but they're going to appear. I've been assured they're going to appear. Oh, there's the door. It's opening right now. Bernard Fanning, Paul Dempsey. See, I'm always the pessimist. I was like, they're not going to turn up. Yes. Your mic should be on, but give them a test.
Hello.
Anyway.
Testing. There we are. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Actually,
How'd it go?
Actually, let's start, because we've just got the sound of blood still ringing in our ears. If you actually read the article that's in the lyric booklet that you've got in front of you as well, if you want to read that later, I didn't realise that Blood was somewhat inspired by Bob Hawke.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, there was a state funeral, which I think was just like a ceremony kind of thing for him, and his granddaughter, Sophie Taylor Price, did the eulogy, and she talked about, you know, his life and his effect on them as grandkids and whatnot. But she said this line, "My blood is your blood, my stories are your stories," in the eulogy, and I just thought it was a really powerful, beautiful line.
Did you remember that from the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually...
Yeah, I wrote it down, I think, at the time. And then I was writing this song about my children, and that came up.
Just naturally came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Let's basically start with the name. We'll start with the predictable one first. I want to know not how you decided on this name. We'll get to that. What names did you not consider? Like, what ended up on the cutting room floor? What were some of the choice names that you came up with?
The working title for, like 2 years while we were putting this together was Defenders of the Realm.
We both still think it's better.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, we couldn't slide that one past management.
Oh, okay, they put a stop to that one.
Yeah.
Wiser heads.
Yeah.
Any others before you got to the national park? There were so many.
20 times a week you'd get a ridiculous text message with some, unrepeatable name.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
There was a lot of filth.
And the idea of just going the predictable route of Bernard Fanning and Paul Dempsey was just off the table from the beginning?
Yeah, pretty much. And, we wanted it to feel bigger than just the two of us. We wanted it to feel like we're not a band. We're a dynamic duo. But you still want it to feel like more than, Simon and Garfunkel. Like, it needs to have a little bit of gravitas. Maybe Defenders of the Realm is too much gravitas, but, National Park seems just right.
Yeah, okay, so the national...
Let's not forget, we wanted it to be as pompous sounding as possible. We really wanted to sound like a pair of absolute wankers.
I mean, hey, I just used the word gravitas. So.
Yeah, gravitas. Yeah, that's true.
National Park just dropped out of the air. It is big. A national park is bigger than just a duo.
There were lots of others. There was Fanning Dempsey Electrical Company, Fanning Dempsey Pool Cleaners.
Airlines.
There was Airlines was one of them. Yeah. So we did try a few, but National Park, okay, now I'm going to be somewhat serious. We liked National Park because the record is not exactly organic. It's more synthetic. It's there's a lot of synthesizers and the sounds are quite sort of synthetic. So it's a nice juxtaposition that it's called National Park, and the cover as well is, the artwork is they're synthesizer waveforms, but you can sort of see water and mountains, and so it's just kind of playing on the idea of National Park, but from this very synthetic juxtaposition.
Yeah, give a shout out because the artwork is brilliant. Who did it?
It's amazing.
Yeah, Jonathan Key, who I had worked with before, and he now has a design studio in Sydney called Studio 3am.
3am, yeah.
And he nailed it.
Yeah, okay.
And we'd actually workshopped a few ideas, and we knew that we wanted it to be pretty minimalist and to reflect what the music was like on the record. And we actually had, I think we use the mountain for Disconnect?
Yeah.
So there was this kind of dot matrix mountain that was used as the artwork for Disconnect, which was originally going to be the album cover. But then kind of right towards the end, Paul came up with that idea of like using the synth waveforms and whatnot, and then Jonathan put that together. And like we had no notion that it would look that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
It's brilliant. It goes hand in hand with the music perfectly as well. Listen, we'll talk more about the influences of this record in just a moment, but in terms of this project actually beginning, was it the Celebrating David Bowie event that was the spark for this collaboration, do you think?
I mean, I guess it was one of, like, we've known each other for a really long time, and you know, from like the late 90s through the noughts, we did a whole lot of touring together, and you all probably know that. But then, you know, like, we both got on with our lives and, you know, didn't see each other for a while. And so I guess the Celebrating David Bowie thing was probably just the beginning of us being, you know, back in touch more frequently or whatever. Yeah. I had done stuff with Celebrating David Bowie. No, I hadn't at that point, but I'd anyway had a kind of relationship with Bowie's band and stuff. And they asked me when they came to Australia, they were like, would you sing a couple of songs and you know, get some other, you know...
Terrible singers.
Yeah.
Lesser folk on board with you, yeah.
Yeah, so like Bernard was one of the first people that I thought of. Sorry, I missed that. What did I miss?
It's all right. I'm just
So you got
I'm riffing off you.
Me and Sarah Blasco. Right?
Yeah, and Chris Cheney.
And Chris Cheney, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Bernard to be a massive Bowie fan like myself, so he was the first person I thought of, like, and assumed that he would love to be a part of something like that, which we all did. So that was, I guess, the beginning, and then after that, Something for Kate recorded our last album in Bernard's studio in Byron, and Bernard sang on one of those tracks, and so it was just kind of like talking.
Yeah, but there must have
more
been a
often.
conversation where one of you said, "Hey, why don't we make an album together?"
It was Steph, was my wife.
Yes, yeah.
She was the catalyst.
She said, "Why don't you guys make an album?"
She actually literally
Took
said
the
that.
words out of my mouth.
But
pretty
did she
much.
say guys or idiots?
Yeah.
She might have said, why don't you two idiots make a record?
And were you just waiting for that introduction? You guys were just staring at each other from across the dance floor. You just needed someone to say it, didn't you? Yeah, all right.
Yeah, but it was... I mean, we don't remember the exact sequence of how it worked, but it just sort of... It just grew. The idea grew a little bit. We just said, let's throw some song ideas at each other, and Paul sent me something. I think we talked about it, and then nothing happened for a few months, and then Paul suddenly out of the blue sent me an idea. He said, look, I've just bought some new recording gear and I was just testing it out, and I just sat down and started playing this, and it's actually kind of like a song. Do you want to see what you think? And I just sat down, listened to it, and I was like, fuck, this is great. So I put something on it that night, I think, and sent it back. And he was like, holy shit, how did you do that so quickly? But for me, I have much lower standards than Paul does. So I don't mind having an idea that's not fully formed if it is going to give a song idea some momentum and push it along.
Yeah.
You know.
Get it to the next stage.
So
did that song end up on the album?
No.
Well,
It was
that was a good story.
No, I mean, it like... yeah. It's actually really good.
It's
and
actually
it
pretty
deserves to be revisited.
That's album 2.
Yeah. But it didn't fit where we ended up.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
But once you guys started breaking the ice and writing, were you surprised that it was an easy process writing between the two of you?
I mean, when Bernard did send back that track like so quickly with an amazing vocal on it, I was just like, I just did the quick mental calculation that this could be half as much work for me.
And twice the money. Yeah.
You wasted in music, both of you.
Yeah, no, we just... I don't remember what we were talking about. Yeah. Once we got rolling, then it just...
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, like...
because it was fun, and that was the whole key. At the beginning, we said, okay, if we're going to do this, let's just make sure that we're enjoying it and that it's fun. And so even before I think we'd really finished a song or had too much musical ideas, we were planning where around the world we were going to eat. So we're like, let's eat in Argentina and New York and Denmark. So that was like recording, mixing and mastering. That was the idea. So we had some grand concepts before the music even came along. It's kind of like Kiss.
Yeah,
you know?
right, okay. Well, you did end up in Norway to actually demo this record.
Yeah.
Before we get into that and the actual technical side of putting this record together, I mean, you've basically said that the key musical period that you're mining influence from is the 77 to 85 period, late 70s, early 80s. So was that discussed beforehand, or naturally were the songs that you were writing together reminding you of that period?
I think it was more that, like, what was discussed, like, once a few ideas had been thrown back and forth and we were both into it and it was fun, once we sort of had that amount of momentum, only then did we start to kind of go, oh, well, you know, we're doing this. Like, what is the kind of aesthetic ballpark? And so what was discussed was that we wanted it to be different. We didn't want it to be predictable. We didn't want it to be like a sort of, you know, vaguely powder-fingery something for Kate sort of. It just, like, if there was any point to do it, because we both could have just gone on our merry way and made more records doing what we do. If there was any extra point or imperative to doing this, it was the fact that it affords us an opportunity to do something different and new and fresh, and it's kind of a waste if we didn't seize that opportunity to push into some other territory. So that, I guess, is why we then sort of started to go, okay, well, we're not going to write songs with acoustic guitars, and we're not going to, like, let's try and then when we talk about all that, you know, music from that time that we do love, you know, Duran Duran, Gary Newman, David Bowie, you name it, then it's kind of like, well, you know, the sort of the defining characteristic of so much of that music is that it relies on synthesizers. And it's really just the sort of tools that people were using at the time. So it's just like it's just like put the guitars away and just sort of grab some different tools that we didn't know how to use that well. So it was also this really exciting learning curve of, like, oh, what does this do? What's an oscillator? What's an envelope filter? And
Yeah,
then,
right.
You know, like,
Okay. So there was a lot, I mean, so that was a lengthy process to actually, you know, learn about the instruments to start with.
Yeah.
Not for him.
it was really fun.
Yeah.
Maniac.
I mean, were you collecting any of these instruments yourself, Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, right, okay. You just didn't know how to use them properly.
I didn't. I was just like reading books and just messing around and just like, I you know, that's the kind of stuff that excites me. So I was like, new toys, new technology, new information, and I just went right down the rabbit hole, and I now have a room that used to be full of guitars. I've been selling guitars to buy synthesizers.
It's a disgrace.
That's an absolute disgrace.
And no shit, I was getting a text every month with a photo.
Do you want to buy a guitar?
With a new synth. Of a new synth. That was just like,
A new synth, yeah,
you've
right.
lost your mind.
Like, we're all here to discuss the fact that we're releasing a new record, but I woke up this morning to the news that Moog have just released their new 8-voice polyphonic synthesizer. I'm like, I need to get home and watch YouTube videos about this synthesizer.
Yeah. For those of us, including myself, who were not around during that time and don't know how special that period was, tell us what is so special about the late 70s, early 80s music scene that you were kind of getting inspired by.
Just to go further on what Paul was saying, that technology was all new. It was coming along very quickly. It was all these new instrument companies and old ones were kind of tapping into this new technology which allowed you to synthesize sounds.
Yep.
And so, you know, Moog and Prophet and Roland were making Junos and all that sort of stuff. And as Paul's explained before, there were new songs coming out that would have a brand new sound that had never been recorded before. So Prince, for example, would get sent a prototype of one of these companies' synthesizers, and he would just I mean, his songs were already pretty good. So, but he would just dial in the preset sounds and use that because it was a new sound.
Yeah.
And that would become the sound that everybody copied. You know,
Yeah,
and,
these- I mean,
and
these-
it just kept happening month after month. You know, like there'd be 3 or 4 released a year.
Yeah, totally. And these companies were really clever because they knew that if they had a new synth product, that all they had to do was get it into the hands of Prince or Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder or someone, and they would use it on their very next recording, and everyone would be like, "What the hell is that sound? I need that," and it would sell 100,000 synths.
Yeah,
So-
it's an
so-
interesting way of selling an instrument, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
an effective way of selling an instrument to the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
Quickly then, Norway is an extravagant place to go to record demos. When
Well, we didn't
you've heard
really-
of the internet, right? You've heard of you know,
Yeah.
exchanging files across the internet. But you went to Norway to demo. Why?
Because we were, I mean, to be fair, we were already right next door. So we were both already going to be in London. So it's not as extravagant as it sounds. We were going to be nearby, and
Yeah, and I have a recording studio in Byron, and we've moved it. We built one and moved it, and we were looking to do a website for it. And so I was looking at all these recording websites around the world, and I found a website which was the 10 most beautiful recording studios in the world. And
You're no idiot.
yeah, and
he had to close the tab on restaurants in Buenos Aires.
yeah, exactly. And so I saw this one in Norway, and as a joke, I sent it to Paul and said, "Hey, we should make our record here." And he just there's no way he could even open the link, and he wrote back, "Yep." And so
What would you have done?
yeah, it was a total no-brainer. And I was joking really because it's so beautiful. It's right on the Atlantic coast, on the west coast of Norway, and you know, like it's got a thatched green roof on top of it, and there's all, you know, stones and beach all around it, and then it's the Atlantic Ocean, and the next thing is Iceland.
Yeah.
There's just nothing there. It's really remote, and so we thought, and all the gear they have is incredible. They've got 2 of every dream sort of piece of hardware and instruments that you would want in a studio. So we assumed that it was going to be super expensive, and it wasn't actually that expensive. So considering that we were there, and that, you know, Oslo is closer to London than Brisbane is to Melbourne, so we just got on a plane.
Yeah, it was
and then
easy.
and we also, because we hadn't been able to hang out very much because of the lockdowns in Victoria in particular, we just said, let's just take a few days and drive around, and neither of us had been to Norway, so we just drove around looking at fjords and and it was incredible. It was August, so the snow was all melting. It was the end of summer. There's these massive waterfalls.
24 hours of sunlight.
Yeah. There was a
And
lot of
if you
sun.
want to draw it into the narrative, you know, that sort of cold, not sterile environment, and with the music, the synthesizers.
Absolutely.
You getting this down for the
But-
next interview?
Yeah, but the only thing is we didn't use any of it.
Oh,
So we'd kind of made the demos.
yeah.
And then when we were in London, we met with Craig Sylvie, who ended up being the producer. And we went to Norway at the time before we'd kind of organised with Craig what was going on. So we were just saying, let's get into a studio together and see what happens with an engineer, and just us 2 and an engineer. And we went and we recorded 3 or 4 songs there, which we'd already demoed. And it was great. It was an awesome experience, but it kind of taught us what not to do, which was leave it to our own devices. We needed a captain kind of thing that was going to say, no, you don't need that 14th falsetto harmony that you guys are putting on.
It has got a very clean sound to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All these songs are very, I mean, there's no fat there.
Yeah. Craig was, he, you know, we've learned a lot after the fact of how much producing he was doing that we weren't even aware of at the time. And then, like, we talk about it now, and you listen back to it, and we also, you know, hear what he has to say about it after it's been done. And it's like, yeah, he knew the whole time things that, you know, that we didn't.
Yeah.
And that he wasn't saying out loud.
Yeah,
Yeah, gently manipulating the process without it being, you know, in your face.
yeah.
Yeah. The other before we get to side 2 of the record, the lyric writing, I'm still kind of trying to figure out how, because you guys are such individual songwriters, and you're obviously sharing the lead vocals. Basically, are you singing the stuff you've written, and then how do you actually merge what you've written side by side with the other writer?
It's like all of the above. Like there's songs where someone wrote all the lyrics, or there's songs where we each wrote half the lyrics. There's songs where we sing each other's lyrics.
But when you talk about an idea for a song, you know, do you discuss first what you're going to write about, and then you each go away and write the lyric?
Only if there was a problem, really. Only if there was like, oh, I don't think that really fits exactly what I was talking about, for example. Right? Like, so I think the first song on side 2, Never Pass This Way Again, originally had a slightly different chorus. It was the same music, but the lyric that I'd written for it was different. And then Paul was like, I think maybe that angle is not exactly right, so I just went and wrote something else.
Yeah, right, okay.
And it worked a lot better. He was right.
Yeah.
As fucking usual.
I mean, this is the whole thing with the trust process as well, because you guys have known each other for so long. You've got that sort of relationship where you can kind of say, yeah, I don't think so, maybe let's do something different, and you don't get offended.
No, yeah, I mean, like this is all supposed to be fun. You know, as I've said already, like we didn't need to do this. It was an opportunity to have fun.
Yeah.
So fun has always been very front of mind.
Yeah.
So it's like if anything was starting to seem hard or difficult, or then it wouldn't be fun. But we're both very easy-going sort of characters, and we don't have a lot to disagree about. Our, we mostly find ourselves in furious agreement.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's true.
Don't you wish the world could be like that?
Yeah.
Furious agreement.
Yes.
All right. We're going to leave some space at the end of this process for you to now ask some questions as well. That's after side 2. Now, this is going to be interesting because I've never actually done this before, where we all three sit on stage and listen to your record
Neither
in a
have
room
I.
full of people. This is a bit like when you see the movie premieres and you know that the actor's gone to the screening. I couldn't think of anything worse than to go to the screening of a movie in amongst everyone else and kind of like, be a bit... So we're going to put you in that position now.
It's fine.
Wonderful.
We'll be watching very closely.
Now, Bernard, I want you to do something while I ask Paul one final question. Can you
Flip that over?
flip it over to side 2?
Don't we have people for that?
So, Paul, something for the audience to listen out for that you're particularly proud of on side 2 of this album.
Ooh.
Once again, he's destroyed it.
One of my favourite moments on the record is actually during the first track on side 2 here, and Michael Urbano. Well, I guess we'll get to talking about the musicians who played on the record with us, but our friend Michael Urbano is on the drums, and he did some shit hot drumming on this song, and there's a moment where you will probably see me laugh out loud at his shit hot drumming.
You're talking about the money's worth, Phil?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had 2 different setups in the studio, where there's Studio A and Studio B, and 2 different drum kits. We had the great fortune and privilege of being able to use both rooms because no one else was there. And in the big room, we had sort of said to him, we want you to bring as many toms as you can. And so he had 6?
No, it's more no, you're right, 6. Yeah, 4 mounted and 2.
Yeah, so there was 6 toms, which is, like pure...
It's picture Lars Ulrich.
Yeah, yeah.
1980s Metallica drum kit. It's that kit.
Yeah, and we just kept going in there, and when we weren't recording anything, and just saying, can you just play and can you just go around the toms? Just because we loved hearing it so much. It sounded so good in the room. But on this song in particular, there's a Phil. We'll give you a heads up.
And it's
called
also
the money's worth Phil because he hits every tom.
Also, just to add to the context, like the small room at this studio, is where Fleetwood Mac recorded Rumours. So the drum sounds in that room with like this just beautiful kind of tight, dry drum sounds, and then the big room is the room where Metallica recorded Load, and originally the 2 studios were identical, but Lars paid the studio $1 million to raise the ceiling in the other studio by 10 feet to increase the amount of reverb for his drum sound. So Metallica actually made physical renovations to the studio for Lars's drum sound, which is why we made Michael Urbano set up his biggest drum kit that he could find that room. And it was like, come on, show us, like let's find out if Lars got his money's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And Michael didn't complain that the room was too big or anything like that. He was happy in that room.
It's never happened. That's never come out of a drummer's mouth ever in the history of music.
The room was never too big.
Yeah, this sounds too big.
I think that he made the best use of the room on this song.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's get into side 2 of The Deluge, the new album from Fanning Dempsey National Park, and we'll get to your questions after we hear side 2. So it's over to you, Bernard. Don't
Ready,
fuck
Tash?
up.
Yeah.